Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, a video of police punching a motorist draws national outrage and the promise of a lawsuit. A new poll shows unwavering GOP support for Trump administration policies. So-called murder rap becomes evidence in the long-awaited murder trial of local rapper Ksoo. St. Johns County prepares to pony up to keep the nights of lights on, and it's getting hotter. This weekend, we're bracing for some record-setting temps. To talk about it all, we're joined this week by Will Brown, race and poverty reporter for Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Ann.
We're also joined by Tricia Booker, author and journalism professor at the University of North Florida. Welcome back, Tricia.
Thank you. Good morning.
Obi Umana, attorney and political consultant. Good morning, Obi.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Frank Powers, former assignment manager at WJCT News for Jax. Good morning, Frank.
Hot, hot, hot.
Hot, hot, hot. Frank, I'm going to give you extra special shout out this morning for my dark chocolate. He's always the candy man. So here we are with a little bit of
Careful with that one.
Orange flavored dark chocolate. Yeah, I'm going to go easy on it. Thanks for being here. Thank you for listening, folks. If you have calls or questions, you can give us a ring at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. You can also watch all these beautiful faces on our live stream on YouTube or Facebook. We're going to start with a segment that's going to have some video in it because there's a lot of video elements, but we're going to start with a story that sort of sucked the oxygen out of the newsroom this week. It began Sunday with the release of what all can agree was a pretty shocking video. A young man who appears to be sitting almost tranquilly in his car as police break his window and punch him in the face. Now, if you're watching the live stream, we're going to show a little bit of the video that he recorded from inside his vehicle. But Will, you in your reporting on this issue this week, you noted that the arrest video, quote, has renewed national conversations about racial profiling, police brutality, and pretextual stops. What kind of attention has this brought to Jacksonville?
It has literally gone across the world. The video has been seen millions of times across multiple platforms. It's been shared, obviously, I think it was first shared on what is now called X. It's been on Threads. It's been on Instagram. I had family members send the video to me and say, "Did you hear about this?" And of course I'd had, but couldn't tell them that. So it has gone far and wide because it has been so shocking. Not necessarily removing Mr. McNeil from the vehicle, but the punch, getting punched in the face while having his hands up and clearly visible in a video is something that has led to a lot of people just asking, what is going on in Jacksonville, Florida?
You know, Obi, there are a few layers of concerns here, and it's probably worth just sort of laying them out. There is the questions behind the originating stop,
Right.
whether that was
Right.
appropriate. There is sort of the appropriateness or the legality of the punch itself, which is kind of a separate issue. And then I think the third matter that has gotten a lot of attention is sort of the failure to report accurately in the police reports, either the punch that happened, that initiating punch, or sort of what happened with the knife that was in this car. Can you
Right.
kind of run through those three things and how they interplay?
I think there's a lot of things happening in this case. With all of these cases, there's nuances here. And I'll be honest, I respect Sheriff Waters for coming on the show and wanting to talk about this. I think the issue that I think a lot of people are having is that what he said didn't match what we saw on the video. And what you saw on the video was an enormous amount of violence, right? That this young kid was getting pummeled while he was on the ground. And then on top of that, you had a police report that didn't match actually both of the videos that we were able to see. But I think the real problem and I think where the bigger concern is the stop itself, right? I think there's people listening to this radio show right now that didn't even realize you could get pulled over for something like that. And it is clear that, on facts and facts that, Black and brown communities get over-policed on these type of issues. And I think the problem that I think people are having is that Sheriff Waters was far too dismissive of what his constituents are going through just because he felt like, as he said in a previous press conference, that his family doesn't feel that way. And I think what you're seeing is anger from that dismissiveness and what happened. I don't think people expect him to solve every single problem, but the way he dismissed what a lot of people have been feeling from the over policing is where the problem is stemming from.
Well, as you say, the sheriff was on the show this week on Tuesday. We do, give him a lot of credit for coming on. It was kind of right after this story broke. But we did talk about, if there were systemic issues. Let's take a listen to what he had to say on this show Tuesday.
I'm not going to run with the systemic thing because I started here in 1991. And just suddenly things are systemically bad. I've been here too long. No one comes to this job. No one comes to work saying, I'm gonna stop me a black man and get into a fight with him and throw him in jail. It's unreasonable.
So Trisha Booker, I'm going to ask you about that. Just because he's worked at this agency a long time. He obviously is very invested in the work that they do, and he trusts his officers. He went at some length to talk about the fact that nobody in his agency designs to go out and beat somebody up. Nobody at his agency, plans to do something like this when they leave for work each day.
I think that's probably, for the most part, true. That's a completely distorted idea of what systemic racism is, though. It is a continued disparaging of a person based on his ethnicity. I don't think that it's a matter of police officers distinctly wanting to arrest black people. It's the way they are treated once they come into the sights of a police officer. I was also really struck by the interview that you gave when he was interviewing with you, that he said he paid no attention to the press. And he almost alluded to the fact that the more press and media attention this got, that kind of validate the less validation he gave the concern. When you're sheriff, you got to pay attention to all different perspectives. And I think you really pressed him on that, the idea that he's not getting perspectives from a variety of different points of view.
In terms of the amount of attention that it got, that was actually something that the governor, when he was here visiting, also kind of got into. He was asked specifically about this. Let's hear what his comment was relative to this video.
You have these situations where people will want to make an issue, but I have every confidence in our sheriff here in Jacksonville that if there's anything that these guys are not living up to the standards, he's going to hold them accountable. But it seems to me like this is trying to create a narrative. Maybe I'll review it, at some point. But I kind of heard about it. Then I heard the response. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of checks out to me. Without even knowing any of the facts, I just know how this stuff works, right?
So Frank, you're shaking your head there. He basically said, I haven't seen it.
Then don't say anything. Okay? All he had to do was say, I'll make a comment when I've seen the video. So everything he says after I haven't seen it is irrelevant. Sorry, but you can't make a comment on something the story is the video, both by what Mr. McNeil created and the body cam. If you haven't looked at that, then wait till you've seen it.
I find it a little disingenuous as well that we just talked about the fact that this has been seen millions of times across the world, and the governor's like, yeah, I don't need to see it.
Well, he's got a lot going on. That's fine. He doesn't have to see everything, but wait till you see it before you comment. Now, you said in your opening statement, and that there was a phrase you used, a pretextual stop. That's what I think this was. Well, they were fishing for a felony.
We should say what he was stopped for, because I don't think we've spelled that out.
He was stopped. The classic example of somebody getting pulled over for not having your lights on. It's 11 o'clock at night, and you're going down the street, and people are flashing you, and then somebody calls 911, says, yo, there's a guy going down the road without any lights on. He's going to hit somebody. That's what you get pulled over for. Not at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when it's cloudy, not raining. Did you see how many other cars did not have their lights on, including the school bus that went right by behind the car? You can see that on the body cam. Now, if you're concerned about safe driving with the lights on in a cloudy, inclement situation, I would think you might want to pull over the school bus driver. You don't have to write him up. Just say, yo, you got kids on the school bus. Put your lights on. But no, that didn't happen.
We've got a call from Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Good morning. The whole situation is ludicrous, and I think for Sheriff Waters, he's done a good job of getting rid of some bad officers, but he only seems to get rid of them after we get video. Now, just think about this, guys. We paid for officers to have body cam. If they're doing this with body cameras on their bodies, what do you think was going on when they didn't have body cam? They're not afraid to beat up a person. And I will tell you what that young man did. Go on YouTube. There are courses or people telling people how to behave when you're stopped, to ask, am I under arrest, officer? They tell you what to do, because this is just a continuation of what's always been happening. We never believed this until we had it on body cam. This happened in February. Why are these officers just being suspended? Sheriff Waters, did you not know this? Do you not routinely inspect body cams? We have to wait until there's a lawsuit, and trust me, why I'm invested is because my tax dollars is going to spend. They don't need another $1 billion for a jail when you can't even patrol your officers to go around beating young men who are trying to comport themselves based on instructions that we are still having to talk. Now people don't have parents. You have YouTube to say, young people, when you get stopped, ask, why am I being stopped, officer? Am I under arrest, officer? They tell you not to get out the car because that's pretextual for them to search your car. They tell you to ask to call for a supervisor. He did what he was instructed to do, and they still hit him in the face.
Linda, I'm going to pause for a second there. So a couple of things we should be clear about. Now, the sheriff has said, unambiguously, he did not know about this until the video
Nobody
started
did.
circulating on Sunday. And perhaps the reason for that, Will, is, this, although there was a response to resistance form written up as required when there is a use of force by police, it didn't mention that initial punch. And that initial punch also wasn't captured on the police body camera. So the only view that shows kind of the officer reaching through the broken window and punching Mr. McNeil in the face came when that video was released Sunday. So we should be clear about that.
Yes, that is all correct. I guess one question I have is, if someone was speaking to JSO and just happened to omit a couple of facts, what kind of charges are they facing? If JSO is interviewing someone, or a prosecutor locally is interviewing someone, and they just omit a fact, like a punch was thrown, what are the consequences for them? It's probably much different from the consequences that the officer from JSO is facing at this current moment. You're completely right that the JSO body camera footage does not show the punch. But this is my pure opinion here, that's probably why Mr. McNeil was filming in the first place. Because, I was given the talk before he was born of what to do when you are pulled over by the police. And at that time, there weren't like cell phones that could capture this kind of thing. But when I inevitably give my young black male child this talk, it will be, make sure you record it. Maybe it's nothing, but at least you have a copy of it. And so multiple cameras can show multiple things. And thankfully we have multiple angles so that we can see what the police saw, what Mr. McNeil saw, and if there are other angles, we can see those as well.
Got a call from Joe in Fleming Island. Good morning, Joe. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. I just had a question, actually. I've seen the video a couple of times, and I just remember a portion of the video that the person who was arrested and abused, he had his door open, and then he shut it. And that, I believe, I'm not certain, is when all of the window breaking started. Can you guys clarify that for me or the audience?
Yeah, the timetable is important there, Joe. And we should say, the Fraternal Order of Police has defended the officer conduct. They're the police union, of course. And they have said, basically, if this young man had simply done what the officer told him to do, Obi, that none of this would have happened. And what Joe is referring to there is the body cam that shows the officer conducting the stop. Apparently Mr. McNeil's window didn't roll down, so he opened his car door. And then when the officer told him, asked him for his driver's license and his registration, he shut and locked the door.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the press conference, and I think, according to him, obviously the window wasn't working.
Which press conference?
The one that he had with his attorneys.
Mr. McNeil.
Yeah, Mr. McNeil. And he said that at that point, the officer had his hand on the gun, and that he was scared and he closed the door because of that. And I mean, it's hard to tell from videos what was actually transpiring, but I think that was kind of part of his fear, right? there. And I think, like, listen, he was asking questions about why he was being detained, which is perfectly legal precedent for him to do that. I think, and to be completely fair to the officer did they stop people all the time, and those are kind of contentious opportunities when those things happen. But he closed the door based on his testimony or what he said is because the police officer had his hand on the gun and he was scared, and so he closed the door. And so I think there's a lot that goes into these kind of stops. To be fair, I think we should expect the police officer to be professional, and I think there's definitely things that weren't professional about some of his actions.
We should say that after Mr. McNeil shut the door, the body cam shows that this officer, Frank, stood outside the door for quite a long time.
Repeating his command to get out of the car, telling him he's under arrest. No gun was pulled during this. The body cam is clear about that. Now, there was one officer who had his hand on a taser. Tasers were used. And this goes to the whole thing about the knife. If you saw the picture of the knife in the debris on the floor there was empty bottles. There was a pit stick. The police report said he reached for the knife. If he reached for the knife, why did not a single police officer pull a gun? Because we've all seen these officer-involved shootings when somebody gets shot and the officer said he was reaching for something. There was a case years ago on the Arlington Expressway where a young man was pulled over by an officer and he reached down onto the floorboards. The officer thought he was going for a gun and lit him up. You know what he was doing? He was putting drug packets in his socks to hide them. That didn't happen. The reaching for the knife didn't happen. McNeil has said that himself, and there's no evidence on any of the body camera or by any of the police officers that he was reaching for a knife, period.
We've got a call from Leonard in Alabama. Good morning, Leonard. Go ahead.
Good morning. How are you?
Terrific. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I've been watching this, and what I've seen was 3 cop cars pulled in there with no headlights on. They had their flashers on and all that, but they did not have no headlights on, period. It seems to me that a cop got to know the law he got to know the law, you know what I mean? And sometimes these cops do not know. They don't even know the oath they took.
Leonard, thank you. Tricia, that's been an observation some have made. You know, a lot of cars typically just have auto headlights now.
Nowadays, but mine doesn't. I have to turn them on.
You do? Okay. Yeah. And, so there is the question of, pretextual stops. The Supreme Court has said that pretextual stops are legal. And so they're frequently used. The question that we were discussing with the sheriff and the kind of you alluded to earlier is whether stops like that are disproportionately used with certain groups of people. And that's kind of always been the complaint or the contention is that, those kind of pretextual stops are used, as Obi said, in over-policing of certain communities.
I don't think that there's any question that that's the case. And I think most criminal professionals or people who study criminology would agree that is absolutely the case. The other question I have here is, okay, his headlights weren't on. Yes, he was asked to get out of the vehicle and he didn't. But this was all happening very peacefully, it seemed like. And it seems like we are headed more toward the idea of this police state. Like if you don't do exactly what the police say, exactly when they tell you to do it, well, something bad's going to happen. And I don't know that that's the way that the police force wants to be presenting itself.
One of the new voices that we heard this week, and this was an event that you covered, Will, was Mr. McNeil, his family, and his new attorneys, including Ben Crump, who's kind of a national civil rights figure, attending. Let's hear a little bit about what Ben Crump had to say at that event.
To the sheriff, respectfully, you can't justify this. You can't condone this. You have to condemn this. You have to look at that video and say, this does not reflect our training, our policies, or our values. And you need to terminate that officer immediately. Immediately.
The officer is on leave, is kind of standard in these investigative postures. The sheriff hasn't weighed in. The state attorney said nothing criminal occurred, so that's kind of the first examination that happens. Now it's at an internal investigation stage, and the sheriff really isn't allowed to weigh in until that report is presented to him.
Right. I do wonder why the state attorney's office didn't speak with McNeil. McNeil's attorneys say the state attorney's office did not communicate with them before coming to the conclusion that this is not criminal. So that's one question that I have. Why didn't the state attorney at least take the time to hear what McNeil had to say, or give his attorneys the chance to at least say, no, we're not going to speak with you? But neither of those happened.
Which means they didn't see the video before everybody else did as well. And I think I think what you saw when he got pulled over is an immense amount of frustration because he felt like what was happening was not justice.
Like, why are you pulling me over?
Exactly. And I think that is what is incensed, what is leading to these interactions is there's a feeling of unjustness to be pulled over for something that you shouldn't be pulled over for. And that leads to an emotional reaction from someone who's being pulled over, who's seen other stories, who's heard other stories of being pulled over, who had a dad who had been pulled over for something similar. And I think you're seeing that. And I think what people wanted the sheriff to say was, hey, I'm going to look into this. But what he did is started off by defending this. And I think that's where the frustration that you're seeing from the people, the attorneys in the community.
A couple points of clarification. Mike on Facebook saying the state attorney saw the video with the punch and still did not prosecute. She needs to be held to account, he says. And I do believe that the state attorney's review was precipitated, as kind of all of these reviews were, by the release of that
right. Nothing
cell phone
started
video.
here until this came out, something that happened 5 months ago. I haven't heard a good explanation as to why he waited so long to put it out there. I mean, okay. Then what changed?
Like
You said trauma?
Yes.
What are you basing that on?
What he said, what Mr. McNeil said. Like he was scared. Like I could see him when I saw him Wednesday. This is someone who just even the conversation of others discussing this, you could see how much he was in among withdrawn, and his eyes, and even before his father started speaking, just his father was barely keeping it together from bawling up there because he had a similar reaction. Like I watched his dad. It was like he was doing everything he could to keep it together before he had to speak because of the trauma, the pain. Like Mr. McNeil's mom said on Wednesday that she couldn't watch that video for months.
You know, that was a very poignant press conference, Will, and I want to ask you about that because the dad, when he spoke, I believe his name was Alton.
Alton Solomon. Yes, ma'am.
He said that, not only was it something to watch what happened to his son, but that something similar had happened to him when he was his son's age, which is a really, I think, just a difficult moment in that whole conversation.
It explained why he was so emotional. Because when I saw him walking in, I mean, it was just like, this is. It immediately stood out to me, just how pained his. Well, Mr. Solomon is technically his stepfather, but he has been the father figure in his life his whole life. But that pain doesn't go away immediately. It's just something that folks have to deal with, and I won't solely say that it's the sole purview of Black young men who have to deal with this pain. There are other people who've been pulled over and have similar pains. It's just some people it takes a couple days, some people it takes a couple weeks, some people it takes a couple years. So, but I could, looking at Mr. McNeil, looking at his mother, looking at his father, like I could see the pain on all of them. And I even saw he was right next to his great grandmother, and you could see her eyes, her whole demeanor. She was heartbroken.
Got a call from AJ in Arlington. Good morning, AJ. Go ahead. AJ, go ahead. You're on air. AJ, we're going to have to put you on hold. We've got a call from Michael on the north side. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to say, if it's two civilians, one guy walks up to another guy, punches him in the face. The guy who gets punched in the face unprovoked has every right to punch that guy back and unleash holy hell on him. Now, imagine if this guy who got punched by the cop, if he got out and started punching back. those officers would have beat him in the dirt and then said it was justified because you hit an officer. How is that right? It makes no sense. And this is a problem people have with police officers. They don't understand, they don't seem to understand, at least some of them don't seem to understand the tremendous imbalance of power that they have. If that happened between two regular people on the street, it's a fight, and that's okay. You punch me, you're getting punched back. But a cop does it, I'm supposed to just take it. You saw what the guy did. He just took it because he knew this is a cop. If I punch him back, I'm probably going to get shot. And at the best case scenario, I'm going to get beat badly. It makes no sense.
Michael, thank you for your thoughts. We've got a call from Simon in St. John's. Good morning, Simon. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for your programming. So from what I understand, the cops are supposed to de-escalate the situation, right? I think like a caller mentioned earlier, there did not seem to be much of a escalation at all from this young man. And instead you have 4 or 5 cops, which from the videos, not a single one de-escalated anything. Instead, it seems like they were the ones that created the situation here and started being physically abusive.
Thanks for your comment, Simon. That was something that came up at the press conference, Frank, and, that his attorneys sort of said, but for Mr. McNeil's demeanor, which was, restrained. He didn't respond to getting punched in the face. He put up his hands even after that happened and sort of sat back and folded his arms. He was then pulled from the vehicle. He ultimately was charged with resisting without violence, which is, this
a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor.
Which he quickly pleaded guilty to the next morning at first appearance. But unfortunately for him, he probably didn't realize it. The escalation came when he wouldn't get out of the car. Now you've gone from you're getting a ticket to, and the officer said repeatedly, you're under arrest for resisting. So that was the escalation. There is still going to be a review by the state attorney's office on this. We know that they quickly cleared the officer of any criminal wrongdoing. The punch, slap in the face, whatever you want to call it, I'm told it's something of a compliance face slap. That's sometimes police jargon, but that's what it was called. That's
meaning
why there was
to win compliance.
To win compliance. Now, the more detailed review by the state attorney's office is still in the works. We were hoping that would come out today, ideally before this show, but it didn't happen. But that's still to come, maybe by the end of the day, maybe not till Monday. But there is more enlightenment to come from that.
But really quickly, I want to tell this really quick anecdote. About like stepping out of the car. I was living in South Texas. I went to a high school soccer game in Kingsville, Texas, to cover a high school soccer game on assignment. On the way back to my office, the Texas Highway Patrol, or whatever it's called out there, pulled me over. They asked me to get out of the car. I got out of the car as asked, and then he said, "Well, you seem nervous." And then asked, "Well, can I search your car?" I'm thinking, well, of course I'm nervous.
You can't search my car because you don't have probable cause.
You asked me to get out of my car. And so I say that to say that I don't know with certainty, but Mr. McNeil is a 22-year-old college student at a historically black university. I am sure that he has had conversations and interactions with people who have had interactions with police, because these are the type of things that are discussed on historically black college campuses because people can speak in confidence. But I say all of that to say that, I'm not necessarily justifying not getting out of the car, but I can definitely understand why someone is so scared that they just lock themselves in their car and say, let me put my hands up and put a video out there and show I am not doing anything that I know to be wrong.
And by the way, the passenger side window was down and he was conversing with a different officer about the situation when that officer told the other one he could go ahead and break the window. So there was actually conversation going on.
Yeah, and going back to this review, I mean, I if they're not going to speak with the victim in this case in an investigation, that is highly unnormal to not have any conversation and consider that investigation complete. So, well, hopefully that at this point they will have some conversation with Mr. McNeil, because to have an investigation in any other case, you would speak to the victim.
We've got a call from, this is AJ in Arlington. Let's try again, AJ. You're on the air.
Hey, this is AJ with Mad Dads here in Jacksonville. And my question is, hey, Frank, how you been? We miss you over there at Channel 4.
Thanks.
You're welcome. My question is, can the state attorney relook at the video and decide to charge the officer? That's my question. Everybody have a good day and a good weekend.
Thanks, AJ. Obi, I mean, you're the attorney on staff here.
Honestly, I mean, I don't, I think once they've kind of cleared them, I don't see that happening and possibility. If there's something else that came out that make them change their mind, that's a possibility, but I don't see that happening now.
Yeah, we've got a call from Lily in Orange Park. Good morning, Lily. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to say everyone keeps asking why did he wait so long to release the video, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. If someone does something inappropriate or illegal against you, it's still inappropriate or illegal even if you reveal it a couple months later. Like if someone punches me in the face on the street, they still punched me in the face on the street, even if it was 5 months ago. I still got punched in the face.
Yeah, fair enough. I appreciate your point, Lily. Thanks for calling.
Now, let me make a point on the process. The criminal investigation is over. The criminal investigation has to be finished before the internal investigation begins. They don't run parallel. They run one after another. So the counselor here is right. They're not going to charge him. They've already made that decision. The IA process can only begin when the state attorney's office has signed off.
The internal affairs, yeah.
Right.
There is also a comment that we got on Facebook from Scott. He says, resisting without violence, a crime about as significant as white shoes after Labor Day. So, Tricia, I think that the conversation, at this press conference this week that Mr. McNeil had, it was sort of interesting. They had another gentleman that was kind of had his name in headlines, his mugshot certainly in the news for a long time, Lakean Woods, who, that notorious mugshot of his eyes all swollen. I asked the sheriff about that on the air the other day, and he said, that was the result of him resisting, being tased, and falling on his face. But he was another instance in which, people saw what they believed was the escalation in what started as a traffic stop over a seatbelt violation. Once again, kind of a minor infraction in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think going back to the idea of the criminal investigation into the officer, that to me, that's important, but it's also kind of noise compared to the failure of the state attorney leadership and the sheriff's leadership to not address the fact that there are people who are concerned about this. And it seems like whenever anybody is bringing up the idea, well, maybe the police need some retraining, maybe we need to look at how we're handling stops in these neighborhoods, that the resounding response is no, everything's great. And it just seems very tone deaf and a failure to look at all of the varying perspectives coming from throughout the community.
But could you imagine, since we're in budget season, if someone on the city council said, all right, JSO, you want your, I think it's 600 something million this year. If you want the totality of this, you need to devote some of this to training some of your officers to community engagement. That would not happen. And I say that to say that we can ask for better training as a community, but the people who can really hold folks to account, whether it's the sheriff or whether it's the people who fund the sheriff's office, they're not going to do it. And there's a belief that they won't do it. And that's where some of the distrust comes in, which is why people try and have videos of their encounters with JSO, because there's not trust that without video evidence or without video proof that JSO will always do the right thing.
It's a very one-dimensional way of looking at this. Like all police officers are bad and are doing the wrong thing, or they're all great and nothing needs to change. Certainly, there is a road down the middle where we have a police force that's working, but also we need to look at some various methods of process.
And that issue was brought up by federal Judge Schlesinger years ago in a lawsuit brought by someone who claimed abuse by JSO. JSO moved to dismiss the lawsuit, and Schlesinger went off on then Sheriff Mike Williams, saying, we see this all over again. The training is a problem for JSO. We've brought this out over and over again. I don't see anything changing. I don't remember what the outcome of that lawsuit was. It was brought by John Phillips, who has many cases against JSO. But it's been noted by the federal system that JSO has training issues.
Yeah.
We've got a call from Daryl in St. Augustine. Good morning, Daryl. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Well, the first thing is this happened several months ago, and the only reason we're talking about it now is because the video came out, and the kid had to release the video. Every one of those officers had video cameras on. How come no supervisor or nobody from the officers ever recorded, ever released this? As far as I'm concerned, every police officer's camera should be available to the press or at least to somebody other than the police officers every single shift.
Interesting proposal. Frank, you'll know that requesting body cam takes
Oh, yeah,
time,
yes.
a lot of money,
Yep, and
often
patience.
and often requires redactions. But I think it's worth noting that the body cam, as we've seen it, does not show what people find kind of most objectionable about that stop. I shouldn't say most objectionable. I don't want to make that judgment, but the thing that you can't see on the body cam that you can see on the video that the motorist recorded was that punch. And so the fact that the punch, Obi, isn't in the police reports, that it isn't in the response to resistance report, and the fact that the sheriff didn't know about it is because it wasn't something recorded by the
Exactly.
body cam.
Well, and also, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is, I mean, the fact that the punch wasn't put in the report is why it wasn't initially reviewed in the same way. And so it was excluded from the report, and that is why the higher ups really did not respond to it, because unless that punch was included in the report, they would have done their own investigation right away.
Right.
Correct?
And I don't mean to imply that the reason that it wasn't included was that was intentional because they knew it wasn't on their body cam. I'm just saying that the fact
Right.
of the recording sort of revealed that for the first time it wasn't available on something, for instance, that supervisors would have reviewed
Exactly.
during the response
That's
to
what
resistance
that's
process.
exactly what I mean.
Right. Like how am I to know something happened if it's not being said? But and this is I think where JSO the officer messed up, because when Ben Crump compared what happened to Mr. McNeil to George Floyd, his whole point was when Minneapolis police initially encountered Mr. Floyd, it was very like, what Minneapolis police described was far different from what the public saw on video.
An incident.
And so that is, and Crump was making the same connection. And anytime that a civil rights attorney is making a connection to your behaviors to what happened to George Floyd, that's probably not good for you.
He did have also, I thought, a very poignant line. Just, the mother spoke, Mr. McNeil's mom, and he sort of said, we all know, kind of, we don't know what it feels like, but we have seen, what happens when your child's name becomes a hashtag. And, that was, I thought, a very powerful moment, just speaking to the fact that experiences like this can escalate so quickly. This one did escalate quickly, Frank. And, people watching that motorist video feeling like that happened despite the actions of the young man as opposed to the actions of the police.
Everybody I've talked to about this week agrees on one point. The optics were bad. Here you have TK Waters, who's done a great job bringing down violent crime. And what's he getting national attention for right now? This incident, which the caller was right. We don't exactly know. Might have been trauma, why it took so long to come out. But it was going to come out sooner or later, and we'd be having the same conversation just sooner. Just bad optics. And it's, the sheriff's in the spot here. He has to come out in support of his men, but he also understands he's getting flack from all corners here.
And to your point about what Mrs. LaToya Solomon said, I quoted her saying, "I'm thankful to God for protecting him. I know what the outcome could have been." Now, before she said "could," I heard it when I listened to her recording later. She started by saying "shh" and then said "could," as in I know what the outcome should have been. And that was something I immediately heard as I was going back through my audio. And I say that to say that she knows that what could and sometimes does happen to young black men who don't GM-fluck to the police fast enough.
We have a question from Ed on Facebook, which I think is worth discussing at least briefly, and then we are going to have to move on. When a policeman says to a driver to get out of the car, are we legally required to do it?
You are legally required to comply with the officer at a traffic stop. The Supreme Court has said that, and you are supposed to comply. But that does not mean immediately you are able to ask questions. You're able to kind of find out why you're being detained. You're able to have those questions, but you are legally required to comply to the officer at a traffic stop. And I think the best advice is to do that, right? To be frank. But I did want to say one thing to the caller that talked about body cams and releases, and I do think I think this will go a long way. The ability to get any information from JSO on these public requests has been hard, and that leads to a lesser feeling of transparency. And I think if the officers and I will say that Sheriff Waters has been more transparent than other administrations,
Yes.
but I think there is still a long way to go as far as where we need to do to be fully transparent and see what is going on
Sure.
behind the curtain.
And he did release the body cam literally the day
Right.
after this
Right.
broke, which is, kind of
Rare.
light speed
Yeah.
compared to any other person
First
in that
full working
position.
day, yeah.
100%. I do want to move on. We've only got a couple minutes, but there was a poll released this week. There was other news besides this week. And Frank, I want to ask you about it. This is the University of North Florida's Public Opinion Research Lab that surveyed only Republicans because they are looking at possibly the next gubernatorial race.
Well, it showed that Casey DeSantis was with a 3-point lead over Congressman Donalds. This poll was something of an outlier as compared to other polls in Florida, ones that showed Donalds with a lead of anywhere from 8 to 19%. So I got to wonder, these 800 people who were respondents, are they mostly around here, where, of course, Casey has high recognition from all her years on TV?
At your station.
But
yes.
but I also say that I think in that poll he said that when he talked to people that had voted in the last election
Primary,
Byron Donalds
15%.
Byron Donalds went up, and I'll tell you, I've done tons of polls at this particular time. People don't know who Byron Donalds is in this part of the
He's
state.
endorsed by Donald Trump.
Right.
so-
And so once the ads start running and you see Donald Trump's picture he's going to fly up the ladder.
Trisha, one of the things that came out of this too was the overwhelming support for Alligator Alcatraz and deportations as being conducted by the Trump administration. Again, this was primarily, or it was exclusively Republicans that they were polling. 65% have a favorable opinion of that detention center.
That was baffling to me. I mean, I don't think we have seen a full accounting of what's actually going on in Alligator Alcatraz. Just last week, there was a report of a minor who had been sent there, a
15-year-old?
Yeah. So that was kind of baffling to me that this kind of was put together overnight. You had a congressional committee that went there and had just terribly different views of what was happening there. And so it was a little alarming to me that people are endorsing this method of detaining immigrants, many of whom's their only crime was being in the country without documentation. Many of them are not hardened criminals and have been in the United States for a very long time.
Will, you had a comment. I'm just going to ask you to keep it brief because we are going to have to wrap.
Two things. One, only Rick Scott and Claude Kirk are the only elected governors in the last 75 years who have not held prior public office, which is what Casey DeSantis is trying to do. And secondly, would someone named Jill Black, who has never held public office in their life and whose only public foray into public policy has been the Hope Florida situation, have any type of polling?
It was interesting. I mean, it seemed like most of the people polled had no idea, had never heard of Hope Florida. And so whatever scandal attaches to that, we'll see how that impacts. But we're going to have to leave it there. Will Brown, Obi Umana, Trisha Booker, Frank Powers, thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Ann.
having me.
Conversation.
We'll be back in just a minute.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com. Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you.
Let's take it nice and easy.
On the next Fresh Air, we remember lyricist Alan Bergman, who with his wife Marilyn wrote the songs Nice and Easy, The Way We Were, The Windmills of Your Mind, and more. Also, our interview with Jessica Mitford, who was part of the infamously nonconformist British Mitford Sisters, the subject of a new BritBox series. Join us.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
This week on Science Friday, a new weird animal appendage just dropped. Step aside skin, scales, and feathers, there's a new growth in town.
Paleontology often requires a kind of fantasy functional biology where you go, wow, what were these for?
Plus, how fast could dinosaurs run? A new study is stomping on some old assumptions. That's on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
Pressure on President Trump intensifies over Jeffrey Epstein, and the House flies the coop. This week on the Domestic News Roundup, the latest from inside the GOP's fight over the files. Plus, Columbia capitulates, goodbye to the EPA's science research arm, and one FEMA chief says he's out. That's all on the Roundup. Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. So I'm sitting here now with the First Coast Connect crew as we know them. Stacey Bennett is my producer, stalwart behind the show every single day. She's here. I'm also joined by the executive producer, David Luckin. You may know him also as station manager, the creator of the Electro Lounge. He wears many hats here at the station. You might have already guessed that we're here to talk to you a little bit about our current pledge drive, which is an incredibly important one, perhaps the most important ever in the history of this station. And that's because we have lost substantial funding. The federal government has stopped funding public media. Our local state government has withdrawn funding for public media. And so we are now more reliant than ever on our community to support this station and to support the work we do. And, you know, putting together First Coast Connect every single day, Stacey, is no small task. You've done it now for more than 2 years. It's a rockin' good time.
It's such a good time. I love waking up, and the first person I talk to is you, and the last person I talk to before I lay my head on the pillow is you.
And we're not always, in lockstep. We have good, healthy, spirited discussions about content, but we are ultimately going for something that is inclusive, something that is, inspiring in some ways, something that is stimulating, and will get people interested in talking.
Right, exactly. And I think the one motivator for me is a person who kind of came from the world of political science, is just how important local news is and local politics. And I've always been a follower of the show, and being able to work on it is such an honor. And being able to connect people who aren't necessarily connected to one another or to their council members or to events that are happening in their communities or to organizations. I think we've talked about it so much on the show that Jacksonville is such a huge place. So for us to be able to get diverse voices on the show and people from different areas, including St. John's, including Nassau, including Southern Georgia, I just think it's just such a way to build community and connect with one another.
And of course, my predecessor, Al, called Stacey the brain. You are the maestro, but this team has been together, predates me, and really, carries an enormous load when it comes to serving the community. And all the more reason that we want people to show that support today and to make a pledge that helps sustain the work that we do and the work that the entire station does.
Oh, totally agree. And with everything Stacey just said, the community is the key word. That's always been the center of this program, allowing us to talk to community leaders and allowing the community to talk to those leaders too.
You created this program, you and Melissa.
For a long time ago, 15 years ago. So I'm definitely attached to it. And I love what we've done over the last 15 years. I'm very proud of all the stories we brought, the entertainment we brought, the enlightenment. And bringing to what Stacey said, it's fun sometimes when we bring people in here who haven't met each other before, and they walk out friends and they understand each other better. So
yeah, our green room is a great place sometimes.
Yeah, it really is.
A lot of cross connections, cross pollination.
Because sometimes we've got to pull you and the guest into the studio because the conversation starts in the green room.
I'll just pause and say, if you can support us, please do. The number is 904-353-9528. You can also go online and you don't have to talk to anybody. You can just go to wjct.org/sustain. And please know that if you are a first-time donor, this time, every single dollar that you donate will be matched by our Board of Trustees. It is a gift that they are making to this community to try to make your dollars go farther. And it is a really essential time to show that support. Stacey, I was talking over you like I often do.
That's not true, but mostly not all the way true. No, but what I wanted to say is, I think people come up to me or come up to you and they say, "Oh, we really like your program. We enjoy listening to the show." And I like to correct them. It is not our program. It's not our show. This show belongs to the community.
So true.
Our main constituency. It's their show, and we are unique in Jacksonville in that you and we do the legwork of the show, but we collaborate with community members who get in touch or email us or call us or pitch segments. So I
Right.
wanted to point that out.
We're sort of the megaphone. We kind of help platform, people and issues. It's not just us. I want to say we have this summer an incredible team of interns, 3 interns, Lo Oliveri, Jessica Lee, Camille Crawford. All 3 have been just a great part of our team. They actually shot a video to sort of encapsulate their experience as summer interns here at WJCT. And if you're watching, I want to show just a little bit of that video so you can get a sense of the work that they do.
My name is Jessica Lee. My name is Camille Crawford. My name is Lo Oliveri, and I'm a talk show production intern here at WJCT. I am one of the talk show production interns. I am an intern here. And we're a great team. We work together on pitching ideas, writing scripts, and just doing everything. My favorite part is probably getting to be in the booth when the show is going on and feeling that live energy in the room, especially when there's a really good guest. We do sit in here and we help out the executive producer with answering calls and monitoring and communicating with the host. I had an interest in learning how to edit and create social media content, and I had so many opportunities to do so here. We always divvy up tasks, and in the production booth, someone does calls and someone types the calls and sends that to Anne. My selling point in considering WJCT was the variety that it offers. Now I get to see the production side of
So that is our team of interns. That is a great kind of youth element of this program. And obviously, we try to represent all ages, but they show such promise, and we're so grateful to them for devoting their summer. They represent Flagler, UNF, and Bard College, so a great team. We should also thank, of course, Brady Coram, who is our switchboard operator and the director of this show and an essential part of the team. But please, if you support the work that we do here at First Coast Connect, please call with your donation. You can call us at 904-353-9528. You can go online at wjct.org/sustain. David Luck and Stacey Bennett, thanks so much for being a part of the team.
Thank
and
you.
it's so good to see you, not behind the glass.
All right. We'll see you next time on First Coast Connect.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Don't Miss a Beat presents The Lion King Jr., the conclusion of their 6-week Broadway Experience summer program. Performances will be held at the Ritz Theater July 24th and 26th. Information at don'tmissabeat.org.